HMS Warspite was the second of the Queen Elizabeth class battleships. It was possibly one of the most famous British battleships from World War II, and for serving in the war she had the most battle honours for any individual ship in the Royal Navy, and for her service she got the title of Grand Old Lady.
Yo, what's up homies, it's OC Gangsta for a brand new video, and today is the next issue in the Ships of War collection. Yes, I've done this for a while because I've been college work, let's just say. So anyway, this is next issue. This is HMS Warspite, a very famous battleship which we had and should know. Everybody should know Warspite. She was one of the most famous battleships we ever had, Britain-wise. So yes, so anyway, let's take a look at the model. So obviously, as we can see, here she is. Very nice camouflage, that's one thing for sure. She had two 15-inch guns at the front and two 15-inch guns at the back. And I forgot the secondaries. I read it a while ago, the book, and then obviously I forgot it. But this is her in a 1942 configuration state. She's very nice. Very nice work they've done to her. But she's absolutely tiny in comparison to the usual ships that I get. She's only just slightly bigger than Grass Bay. So anyway, here she is with the front cover. Sorry about the shadow, it's dark here in Britain. Because, well, typical British weather. So anyway, obviously here's a picture of her at the front. And next issue is the Dunkirk sister ship, Strasbourg. So HMS Warspite was the second of the 5 Queen Elizabeth class battleships that was made prior to World War I, practically. Here she is being launched, but it talks about HMS Dreadnought first, about how we were the first ever to, how Dreadnought evolved modern battleships. She did, because she was fitted with the biggest guns at the time, and she was absolutely fantastic, Dreadnought was. And we managed to build her in 14 months, Dreadnought, but that's what it talks about. I don't know why it talks about this, but it just does. And anything that was made before Dreadnought was rendered obsolete, as it says over there. But obviously what happened was that we obviously adapted our ships. We had Bellerophon, King George V, I know. We did have another King George V prior to the one that we all know from 1940s. And we had Orion and Iron Duke. But it was really the Queen Elizabeth that set out the next big thing. Because the Queen Elizabeth was different than most battleships because she had 2 guns at the front and 2 at the back. And this was really the first ever time. A lot of them, like Nassau, had them like 2 at the front, 1 at the front, 1 at the back, and 1 on either side. And Iron Duke had 1 in the middle, but essentially Warspite had this, which was completely different for battleships at the time. And not only that, but she was also the first ever ship to be equipped with 15-inch guns. This is why the Japanese absolutely loved our ship designs and implemented them on their own. Also, she was very different because the Queen Elizabeth ran on just oil. They didn't have to run on coal. And she was really revolutionary, the Queen Elizabeth class. But essentially, obviously, Warspite was made in 1913. It was then eventually commissioned in March 1915. And she cost a bloody lot at the time. That's one thing for sure. Here's another picture of her just as she received her last really configuration before World War II got fired up. Obviously she was assigned to the Grand Fleet originally under command of Jellicoe and Beatty, and what happened was that obviously she instantaneously rammed into her sister ship, Barham. Now I'm not joking, this actually did happen. I did with sister ship Barham during an exercise. But then obviously on the 31st of May 1916 we had this great big battle. In fact, the only big naval, well, we did have a few others, but the biggest naval battle from World War I, which was the Battle of Jutland. Essentially nobody knows. It was basically our version of Guadalcanal. We don't really know what happened. The British claim, we claim victory, but when I look at the statistics, we somehow lost more men and ships, and I really think, did we actually win? Did we actually, when we could have done it 10 times better? It was just because of Admiral Beatty. Blame him. Jellicoe got all the blame, when really Jellicoe was a great guy. It was just Beatty stole the glory. And HMS Warspite, she obviously she went in to go and attack with the battleships, and she received 150 hits, and 14 of her crew were killed. She was absolutely battered. And here is actually the damage that's been inflicted on her. As we can see, there's just a great big gaping hole right there below her porthole, as we can see. Obviously, we won the Battle of Jutland because we could repair our ships faster. No, I'm not joking, that actually is the reason why we won, because we could repair our ships faster than the Germans. And she was attacked by a submarine, but obviously, they missed completely, and so they buggered off. And then what happened was that she rammed into another ship, because that's what she's famous for, partially. The Romanian passenger liner off Portugal. Great, just as the war finished. And so this was Warspite in her first configuration, when she was just launched and fitted and everything. We can see her distinctive 15-inch guns. And she has 2 funnels and a high superstructure. And then what happens is that she suddenly changes. We can see that she's got a 15-inch gun still. Her hull's still the same. But her funnels has been joined together, as we can see. And her tower's changed a little. It's become more bulky-like, essentially. And the mast at the stern has been risen. This is a fact file. She had a complete top speed of 24 knots. She was armed with primary 15-inch guns and a secondary armament of 6-inch guns alongside here. And what happens is that some of these were later removed to obviously put in these guns, and these guns were obviously, you know, dual purpose AA guns as well. And she was essentially fitted with Vickers here. And, you know, the whole shebang and the pom-poms. Like most British battleships, she was modernised. But her actual armour was flipping out. It was absolutely fantastic. It was 13-inch thicker than the Iron Duke class. Her armour was absolutely fantastic. And she was one of the best battleships we ever had. It's a fact. But capable of top speed of 24 knots. Obviously, as we can see here, she received one of the longest range hits on another battleship, the Giulio Caesar, Tier 5 in World of Warships, and she's Tier 6, at a range of 24,000 kilometers, 24 kilometers, during the Battle of Cambria. And it was apparently the most reliable and accurate armament of the Second World War for a battleship. More accurate than that of the guns of an Iowa-class battleship, or Bismarck, or Yamato, you get the point. Obviously had this problem where our Prime Minister said, hey, we're not going to go into war with Hitler, and then basically the next day invades Poland, and we're like, oh dear. So obviously, yes, we did get dragged into another war later, because of reasons no one knew. And what happened was that obviously she was eventually, just before war, she was eventually, 1937, she was refitted, and it cost another over £2 million to make her like this, and she was badass like this. She absolutely was. She had some of her guns removed, but they were replaced with better ones, and she was fantastic. But what happened was that her first task was to basically go and attack Eisenhower's Scharnhorst, which recently sunk a ship, and they failed. And then what happened was that obviously she then went to obviously go and help with the invasion of Norway and Sweden. Not to help them invade, but help to stop them, where she encountered some German cruisers. What happened after this was that she basically got them. She blocked them off with a bunch of other ships, and she absolutely ripped them apart. And this is the reason why she was famous. She had that many battle honours, and Grand Old Lady, was because she sunk that many ships, considering the fact they were small destroyers. But she engaged 8 German destroyers, which was quite a lot. And then what happened was that later, what happened was that her swordfish, she was originally equipped with a swordfish before a walrus, and it actually sunk a U-boat. U-64, I must have said U-571 then, oh god. That was a bit horrible. And she actually sunk 2 destroyers. But obviously after this, what happened was that she returned to Scapa Flow, where she went to serve in the Mediterranean. She was hit by a Ju-87, and what happened was that it literally did no damage to her whatsoever. I'm not joking. What happened was that obviously after this, what happened was that she Battle of Cape Matapan, where essentially they tried to get the Allied convoys, and what happened was that she engaged the Vento. What happened was that she basically said bugger off, and she ran off. But obviously not the cruiser Pala, and what happened was that the cruiser Pala was left dead in the water. And what happened was that her sisters came to try and get her out of it. They tried to tow her away with a bunch of destroyers, and Warspite, with a bunch of other British ships at night, used their radar, because that was the most powerful weapon we had during the war, radar. We knew when the enemy was going to attack us before they even knew it themselves. And we absolutely ripped their ships apart. And what happened was that obviously only 2 of the destroyers actually made it out. Out of a total of 7 ships, only 2 survived on the Italian side. And obviously here's a picture of her, Warspite, with HMS Resolution in the background, as we can see. And obviously after this she then went to Japan, and she didn't fire a single shot at all. So obviously they thought, right, we're not using her, so let's get her the hell somewhere else. And what happened was that she was put in Force H, where she did bombarding of Catania. Sorry if I pronounced it wrong. And obviously what happened was that obviously she then led the Italians surrendered, didn't they? So she led the vessels to obviously go to the Allied ports to be kept safe. And what happened was that she then bombarded a few other places, and she was hit by 2 Fritz bombs. Yes, she was. She was hit by 2 Fritz bombs. The first one went straight beneath her and exploded, causing a hole. The second one hit her starboard side and caused another rip, and you know what? Only 9 people died. And she didn't sink. Whilst Roma was hit with 2 and she just died instantly. She just died. So it really shows the difference between how our ships were the best during... Okay, well, were one of the best during World War II. Our ships were absolutely fantastic. We could survive anything. And don't you dare say about the Battle of Malaya. Don't you dare. Malaysia, sorry. Was it? Don't you dare talk about the Battle of Malaysia or Malaya. We don't talk about that. She eventually went to go and take part in the Normandy landings. And she was used in D-Day to go and bombard. But obviously here's Warspite guns under HMS Valiant, as we can see here. But yes, what happened after that was that obviously she was assigned to D-Day, where this was really one of the last things that she did. She did the bombardment D-Day, and then here she is here doing bombardment. And then what happened was that she did later bombardments at the Battle of Brest to reclaim the French port of Brest, which helped us. And she just really slowly, obviously, as the Americans and the British and the Russians came on Germany, you know, and the war ended. And her last job was to essentially just, wipe out any German resistance, and one last bombardment at the Walcheren Island to stop German resistance. And obviously what happened was that she was approved for scrapping in 1946, but she wasn't scrapped until 1947. What happened was that she departed, where eventually she ran aground. Yes, she was. She ran aground. Here she is, running aground. She ran aground, and it was till 1950, November, that we were actually able to scrap her. You know, she really wasn't going down without a fight. She was the best. She had the most battle awards for any ship, any British battleship, and she was named the Grand Old Lady because she was that old. All of them were just absolute old, and here she is getting hit by a shell. But yeah, eventually she was obviously scrapped. And that's the end of her. That's the end of that. So next issue we got is the French battleship Strasbourg. This is a ship to Dunkirk. Basically, Strasbourg was in the Battle of Meuse-Kerbe. What happened was that basically British turned up, beat the crap out of the French Navy, and then French Navy then went and fled to Casablanca, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong. And yes, eventually we basically both battered Strasbourg into oblivion. It was the Allies and the Axis, and then the US bombers. And so that's the end of that. So that'll be next time. Yes, I know it's taken me absolute weeks. This part that I videoed now took 2 weeks after the original first part which I videoed because I haven't had time. So yeah, that's Warspite. She's a nice little ship, isn't she? So anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video. Don't forget to like, comment and subscribe. And as always, peace out, my homies.